The bus pulled up on Westbridge's main drag, and the hot Texas air blew in like a hot desert. Alex Garrett rose from his battered seat, his bones creaking softly from the fatigue of the long drive. He clutched the canvas sea duffel bag he'd carried for the last few years, worn and with the faded letters of his last name. His heart was beating faster than he wanted. He was back, home, after everything. From the outside, it all seemed almost unreal. Returning was like a dream. Yesterday, the dust, rumble, and tense silence of Afghanistan. Today, clear skies, the singing of grasshoppers, peaceful streets filled with the scent of hot asphalt and freshly mown grass. Westbridge seemed the same as before, and yet completely different, as if time had passed here apart from the war. Alex was in his early 20s, but the war had carved an age into his soul that was disproportionate to his face. A thin scar glinted on his temple, barely noticeable, but for him it was an eternal reminder. He touched it reflexively, as if checking, was all this really happening? As he stepped onto the hot sidewalk, a wave of sounds nearly knocked him off his feet. First, the rustling of flags, then applause, shouts, laughter. At least 100 people had gathered near the bus stop. He froze. People were holding homemade signs. "Welcome home, Alex. We are proud of you." Some were waving American flags, others were waving their hands, holding back tears. He noticed Mrs. Hale from across the street, who had once treated him to homemade cookies, and Mr. Barker, his former high school coach. Even old man Wells from the grocery store stood at the edge of the crowd in his usual plaid shirt. Alex recognized many people, classmates, neighbors, teachers, old acquaintances. He had not expected such a reception. His lips twitched in an attempt to smile, but there was a lump in his throat. Something warm and dull rose in his chest, something he had not felt for a long time, as if a part of him, long lost on the battlefield, had finally found its way back. A girl of about 10 years old ran out of the crowd holding a sign. It had the following scrawled words, "Welcome back, Alex." The girl ran up to him and hugged him tightly around the waist. He recognized her, the niece of his best friend, who had died in one of the operations. His heart sank. He gently stroked her hair, closing his eyes for a moment. Embarrassed by the attention, Alex adjusted the strap of his bag on his shoulder. He had expected to meet, at best, 2 or 3 friends, but certainly not a whole delegation. An older man with a broad, smiling face, wearing a cowboy hat and a good suit, stepped forward. Mayor Frank Walker, the man whose portrait hung in the city hall. He spread his arms wide, greeting the veteran. "Welcome home, son," the mayor said loudly, his voice cutting through the din. "You're making Westbridge proud." The crowd applauded. Alex felt warmth rising in his eyes. He had not expected such a meeting. The mayor hugged him tightly, patted him on the back. Flashes were blinking around him. It turned out that the local newspaper and even the TV channel had sent reporters. Alex heard the clicks of cameras and saw their lenses catching every moment. "Thank you, sir," Alex said, feeling a little awkward. He wasn't used to such glory. He'd been decorated in the army, yes, but everyone around him had been a hero there too. And here he was alone, in full view of the entire town. "Thank you," the mayor pulled away, but continued to hold Alex by the shoulder as if showing off a trophy. "You served our country with honor. Westbridge honors its heroes." More applause. Alex modestly looked down, feeling his cheeks begin to burn treacherously, and at that moment his gaze caught a face in the crowd. He squinted, not believing his eyes. A little further away, in the half-shade of the plane trees, stood a girl, and her light hair shone in the sunlight, as if framed by a halo. Alex's heart involuntarily skipped a beat. He knew that face. He couldn't help but recognize it. Casey Walker. That same Casey, as if from a youthful dream, from a past life in which everything was simpler, purer, more naive. The mayor's daughter, the city princess, Miss Westbridge for 2 years in a row. Her smile was the calling card of school morning performances, and her laughter was like part of the city landscape. In those distant school years, she seemed unattainable to him, like the light of a distant star. Alex remembered how he stayed longer than everyone else after high school practices, just to pass her at the gate. He remembered how he searched the stands for her face at school games, hoping for at least one quick glance. But then she was dating the team captain, the most popular guy in school. Alex was just a reliable defender, a good player, but without the aura of glory. He didn't dare approach, didn't say a word, and then Casey left for college. And since then, silence. Only occasionally photos on social media, other people's memories, shadows of unfulfilled. And now, there she was, standing there, as if she had stepped out of that distant school party, only more mature, serious, but with the same expression of soft confidence in her eyes. She was wearing a simple white dress, slightly fluttering in the light breeze, and sandals with thin straps. In her hands was a bouquet of wild flowers, absurdly alive in this hot August landscape. She was looking straight at him. Alex couldn't take his eyes off her. It was as if all the noise of the crowd had disappeared, just her and him. Between them, years, distances, unspoken feelings. He suddenly felt like the same guy with the ball under his arm, just walking off the field. And then Casey stepped forward. Casey smiled shyly, meeting his gaze. She was holding a small bouquet of yellow roses. Alex suddenly forgot about everything around him, only her and no one else. He automatically took a step forward towards her, not even noticing how the mayor released his shoulder and stepped aside, making way for his daughter. "Hello, Alex," Casey said softly, handing him the bouquet. "Welcome back." Casey. He trailed off, feeling the words stick in his throat. Instead of 1,000 thoughts filling his head, all he could say was, "Thank you." He took the flowers, not taking his eyes off her green eyes. They were at arm's length. Casey bit her lips slightly, as if embarrassed by the crowd around her. And then she suddenly stepped forward and hugged Alex. He was confused, but his arms hugged her back. The familiar, delicate scent of her perfume, light and floral, struck him in the memory. The crowd around him buzzed joyfully, someone even whistled. Alex closed his eyes for a moment. He had been on the road that morning, somewhere between dusty ranches, and now he was holding the girl of his dreams in his arms. "We're so glad you're back safe," Casey whispered against his chest. I'm so glad." Alex didn't know what to say. He just held her carefully, as if afraid to scare her away. It seemed like the ground would slip out from under his feet. Everything that was happening was so unreal. Only when Mayor Walker cleared his throat did he and Casey let go of each other at once. "Well then," said the mayor in a satisfied tone, "now let's all give way to our hero. He probably wants to go home to home-cooked food and rest." People laughed. Joyful cries were heard. Many came up to shake Alex's hand, to greet him personally. He smiled, thanked him, feeling the sincere warmth of these simple neighbors. Someone patted him on the shoulder, someone repeated, "We are proud of you." At that moment, Alex realized how much he missed his native corner of the world, where he had been known since childhood. Without the bustle of big cities, without the worries of war. Here it is safe. Finally, the crowd thinned. The mayor saluted, saying they would see each other again. Alex nodded, not quite believing that the mayor himself was paying so much attention to a mere retired sergeant. Frank Walker got into a chauffeured black car that pulled up, probably heading back to City Hall, but Casey stayed. "Do you want a ride home?" she asked, tilting her head slightly coquettishly. "Daddy gave me the car." "That would be great," Alex smiled. A few minutes later, they were driving down the main street of Westbridge. Dusty sidewalks, faded shop signs, familiar streets, all of it flew past the window as Casey turned the wheel of the blue pickup. Alex glanced at them, then furtively at her profile, her delicate nose, the expressive curve of her lips. She hadn't changed much since high school, only her features had matured, become nobler or something like that. "How do you like home after all?" she asked, glancing at him briefly. The traffic light at the only intersection blinked green, and Casey made a smooth right turn toward Alex's neighborhood. "I can't believe I'm here," he answered honestly. "I'm still waiting to wake up in the barracks at Reveille." Casey chuckled softly. "You won't have to wake up there anymore. It's all over. You're home now." Home. The word sounded like music. Alex looked at his hands, calloused, tanned, with sun-bleached hairs. On his wrist, an old army camaraderie, a braided bracelet, gleamed dully. He squeezed his fingers. Home. A new stage. What do you plan to do next? Casey asked. Well, after you rest. Alex shrugged. It's hard to say right away. Maybe I'll get a job somewhere. I was a mechanic before my service, and I knew the technology pretty well in the Marine Corps. I'll probably continue this work. A mechanic? Casey smiled. You always loved tinkering with cars. I remember you fixing a motorcycle in the yard back in high school. Alex looked at her in surprise. Do you remember? Of course. I remember a lot of things. She slightly closed her eyes, as if remembering the past. For example, how at graduation you saved a kitten that climbed onto the roof of the gym. Alex was embarrassed. Nonsense, I just couldn't quit. I thought it was so noble, Casey said softly. I thought you were the bravest guy I've ever known. But you dated Brandon Hall, as far as I remember, Alex couldn't help but say. Brandon was the team captain, the school's handsome man. Casey snorted. Oh, Brandon. He moved to Austin and seems to be happy with another cheerleader now. We broke up a long time ago. She glanced at Alex and added, People change. I have changed too. Alex met her eyes and suddenly saw in the depths of those green eyes some sincerity, warmth, directed towards him. His heart skipped a beat. The car stopped at a small one-story house with peeling white paint on the side walls. This was where Alex spent his childhood and youth. After his mother died, the house was empty. Alex's father had not lived in Westbridge for a long time. They hardly communicated. So when Alex went to serve, he didn't really have a place to live, except for this old house, which was left in his name. Neighbors looked after it, sometimes mowed the lawn, but otherwise the house stood alone. Thanks for the ride, he said, turning to Casey as the engine died. And for everything else, too. You're welcome. I'm here if anything happens. Casey paused. Maybe I'll see you tonight. Old Joe's is having a party for you. Dad mentioned something about wanting to throw a little celebration. Alex was surprised. Really? I didn't know. Well, now you know, she smiled almost embarrassedly. Come, okay? Around 7. The whole city will probably be there. Of course I'll come. Alex tried to stay calm, although inside he was rejoicing. She herself was inviting him to see her again. They said their goodbyes, and Casey sped off down the street in her truck, leaving Alex alone in front of the house. He watched the car until it turned the corner. Alex took a deep breath of the familiar air, mixed with the aroma of dry grass and sun-warmed asphalt. His childhood friend David, a neighbor boy who had just come out after hearing the noise of the car, was already waiting for him on the porch. They hugged, patted each other on the back, and exchanged a few jokes. David helped bring his things inside the house. The place smelled musty and dusty, but the furniture was still there, as if it had been waiting for its owner all these years. Alex dropped the bag and looked around. Nothing had changed. The same faded photo of his mother on the mantelpiece, the same old sofa with a blanket. Only silence. Glad to have you back, buddy, David said, pouring 2 glasses of cool lemonade from the bottle he'd brought with him. The city just wasn't the same without you. Thanks, Dave. Alex sat down, stretching his legs out with pleasure. Honestly, this is the lemonade I missed the most. David laughed. They clinked their glasses and drank it down. The sweet, cold liquid was a relief from the heat and fatigue. Listen, this whole meeting, Alex began, still digesting the events. Did the mayor organize this? David nodded. Yeah. When he found out you were coming back, he immediately decided to throw a party, like to show how proud the city is of its veterans. You know, politics and all that. But he did it from the heart, I think. Alex thoughtfully rolled the empty glass in his hands. It's nice anyway. I didn't expect it. By the way, David grinned, nudging him with his elbow. Did you see the way Casey was looking at you? Alex's cheeks turned pink. Don't make things up. I'm not making this up. David exclaimed cheerfully. She couldn't take her eyes off you. Of course, such a hero has returned, grown up. And she obviously liked you at school, it's just circumstances. Alex shook his head, not wanting to build unnecessary illusions, but a glimmer of hope glimmered in his soul. Did he really have a chance? See you at Old Joe's today? David changed the subject, standing up. I'm going to stop by and congratulate you. Yes, Casey said there was a party planned. That's great. Then see you tonight, friend. David patted him on the shoulder and headed for the exit. Already at the threshold, he turned around. Alex, rest for now. You deserve it. The house fell silent when his friend left. Alex walked through the rooms, opening the windows. The sunlight illuminated the dust motes in the air. He felt a slight detachment, as if this was someone else's life. Earlier in the week, he had been at a military base in California, filing his discharge papers, living the usual army routine. Now he was free, at home, and facing uncertainty. But when he remembered Casey's embrace and her gaze, his anxiety eased. Alex sank into the old chair, taking out a notepad and pen. He decided to write down a few goals. It would help him collect his thoughts. The page was almost empty, except for the line, "Find a job." He was thoughtfully doodling small details in the margins with a pen when he noticed that he had written the name Casey. Alex chuckled to himself, tore the sheet of paper out, and threw it away. No time to be daydreaming. That evening, as promised, a large crowd gathered at the Old Joe's bar. This establishment was legendary for Westbridge, a wooden building with a sign darkened by time, inside a dozen tables, a counter, always fresh, cool ale, and the best steak in the area. Alex entered modestly, but was immediately surrounded. More congratulations, slaps on the back, treats. The owner himself, Joe, a huge gray-haired man in a cowboy shirt, approached him. "The first one is in the house, hero," he proclaimed, handing Alex a beer. Alex thanked him and took a sip of the frothy cold brew, the best he'd had in years, no joke. Casey showed up a little later, with the mayor, her father, and a couple of city council members in tow. Her arrival did not go unnoticed. It was as if all the conversation in the room had momentarily died down, as if someone had muted the outside world to let the scene shine. She was wearing a soft blue dress, light and airy, with thin straps like a summer afternoon, shimmering with soft reflections under the light of the chandeliers. The dress barely touched her knees, emphasizing her lightness and grace, but at the same time it was modest, without ostentatious sophistication. Her hair, light, with a soft golden tint, was loose, falling freely over her shoulders, slightly curling at the ends, as if caught by the wind that she brought with her from another world. Alex stood at the far end of the room, where music was playing and someone was carrying a tray of drinks. He saw her, and it was as if all the world had concentrated on one point. Everything else was a blur. The bustle, the waiters, the whispers, the hugs, the claps on the shoulder. Only her. Her easy gait, confident but soft, like someone who is not used to rushing. Her gaze was open, calm, and in it there was a slight surprise, maybe even shyness. Casey did not look around. Her eyes slid across the room and stopped on him. Alex admired her from across the room, not moving. His mouth was dry. He suddenly felt insecure, like in those school years when one look from Casey was enough to make his heart beat faster. Now she was part of his evening. Real. Present. In this room, among all those who had come for him, for some reason she was the most distant and the most desired. Mayor Walker cleared his throat and loudly offered a toast. Everyone around him fell silent, raised their glasses, listening to him talk about how important it was to appreciate young men like Alex who had given their lives for their country. Alex listened as if in a dream, nodding occasionally. Then he thanked the people back, as briefly and simply as he could, but the people greeted his speech with a standing ovation. Music, laughter, conversation, the evening flowed easily. Casey spent most of the time with her father, but she caught Alex's eye a few times and gave him a warm smile. Finally, after an hour, the mayor, tired of the attention, went home and Casey remained at the bar. She moved to a table with Alex and David, who were chatting animatedly about the local news. I hope I'm not disturbing you, she asked, sitting down on the chair next to Alex. No, what are you saying? He quickly pulled out a chair for her, a little awkwardly. David grinned meaningfully and soon, under some pretext, moved to another group, leaving them alone. How's the party going? Casey asked. She pulled a light, iced cocktail toward herself and took a sip. Great, Alex said honestly. I didn't expect it, really. Thanks for coming. I wanted you to come back from the very beginning, she admitted. When you left. You know, I regretted then that I didn't get to know you better earlier. Really? Alex thought he had misheard. Her words seemed like the fulfillment of the dreams of the young man he had been. It's true, she looked down at her glass, running her finger along the rim. You were always special. It was probably just bad timing, school, everything. And when you left, I suddenly realized that I'd missed something important. Alex froze, afraid to scare away this frankness. His heart was pounding in his chest, somewhere in his throat. Casey, I had no idea you were so. He hesitated, searching for words. What you thought of me? She smiled sadly. I thought about it. I just didn't know if I'd have a chance to tell. For a moment, both were silent. Someone at the next table laughed loudly. They were celebrating a victory for the local baseball team. In the corner, the radio was playing an old country ballad. Now there's a chance, Alex said quietly. Casey looked up at him. Her eyes were gleaming with tears, or maybe it was the lights from the garland over the bar. Alex wasn't sure. But he was sure of one thing. He wasn't going to let this chance slip away. He touched her hand, which was lying on the table. She did not pull away. Let's try starting over, he suggested, his mouth dry with excitement. Will you let me take you on a date? A real one, without the crowds, without all that? Casey laughed through the tears that still welled up on her eyelashes. Alex, we're talking like we're in a bad movie, you know? Of course, I invite you. Not even to one. He smiled too. It seemed like fanfares were playing around them, although in reality everything was still going on. Someone was calling the bartender. Somewhere a glass was falling. But for Alex, there was only her laughter. Alex came home that night feeling like the happiest man in the world. Casey kissed him goodbye in the car, promising to call in the morning. It was his first kiss with her tender, warm, with a cherry cocktail taste. An hour later, he stood at the gate, looking at the stars, not believing his happiness. Just a few months passed, and Alex's life turned into a fairy tale. Casey became his girlfriend openly, officially. They spent all their evenings together, walking in the city park, going to the lake near the city, where they watched the sunset, sitting on the hood of her pickup. Alex got a job as a mechanic in a small car service, but the idea of opening his own business was already maturing in his head. He wanted to provide Casey with a decent life. Mayor Walker unexpectedly actively supported the young man. It turned out that the city administration was not against helping a war hero. Frank Walker suggested, "Why don't you open your own auto repair shop, Alex? The city is ready to give a preferential loan to a veteran, and I will help find a place." At first, Alex did not believe in such luck. But the mayor was serious. 6 months after Alex's return, Garrett's Auto Repair opened in Westbridge. A spacious garage with 2 lifts, an office reception area, new equipment, all this was purchased with a city grant and a loan. Alex worked from morning till night and hired a couple of assistants. His reputation as an honest and skilled mechanic quickly attracted customers. And in addition, the mayor made a deal. All city police cars and municipal equipment would be serviced by Alex. This guaranteed a steady income. Alex didn't know how to thank him for this trust. But Mayor Walker just waved it off. Just do a good job, son, and continue to be a good citizen. That's the best thank you. Casey was there all the time. It turned out she had a degree in business administration from college, and she helped Alex with the bookkeeping and advertising of the workshop. They became a real team. Every evening, Alex, tired and covered in machine oil, returned home and his beloved girlfriend met him with dinner and a smile. Often, she herself dropped by the garage during the day bringing lemonade, asking about things. The workers teased Alex. My wife came to check, and he only grinned happily in response. A year after Alex's return, they got married. It was a town-wide event, a formal ceremony on the central square in front of the town hall. Casey wore a dazzling white dress. Alex wore his Marine dress uniform. He insisted on getting married in uniform, paying tribute to his fallen comrades. The mayor personally walked his daughter down the aisle and afterwards wiped away a tear of joy as he toasted the newlyweds. All of Westbridge rejoiced, a beautiful couple, beloved by the town. Alex caught himself thinking more than once that day that it was too perfect, that it couldn't be. But when he looked at Casey shining next to him, all doubts disappeared. He had found his happiness. After the wedding, they moved from Alex's old house to a new cottage on a quiet street not far from the center. They said the mayor helped with a favorable price from a realtor he knew. Alex still had a tendency to be modest, but Frank Walker only instructed, "Accept the gifts of fate, son. You deserve it." A year later, their son, Michael, was born. Alex remembered that day in every detail, how nervous he had been in the hospital hallway, how he had first held the tiny bundle containing the screaming bundle, how Casey, pale but happy, had whispered, "That's our boy." Alex's heart had nearly burst with love and pride. He had become a father, a role his life as a soldier had not prepared him for, but one he had embraced wholeheartedly. The next few years passed quickly and quietly. Alex worked, expanding the business. The auto repair shop was thriving. A car wash and a small auto parts store were added to it. Casey partly ran the business, partly stayed home with Mikey when he was very young. But as the boy grew up, she began to take on more and more administrative tasks in the business, allowing her husband to concentrate on the technical part. The mayor remained supportive of the family. The Garretts were the guests of honor at every town festival. Frank Walker, who had become not only Alex's father-in-law, but also his mentor, often dropped by for barbecues on weekends. He played with his grandson, argued politics with his son-in-law over beers, and seemed like the kindly patriarch Alex truly respected. The young man didn't have his own father around, and perhaps that's why he especially appreciated Walker's attention. Of course, there were also everyday difficulties: a loan for equipment, sleepless nights with a baby, rare but occurring quarrels due to fatigue. However, all this was a trifle against the background of general happiness. Every evening, Alex fell asleep next to his beloved wife, holding her hand, and thanked fate for this gift. Sometimes he had disturbing dreams about the war, but he woke up, and Casey's whisper, "Everything is fine, I'm here," drove away any fear. 6 years passed like this. 6 years of peaceful life, which Alex did not dare to dream about under the roar of explosions overseas. He had a family, a home, and a successful business. It seemed that there was only more joy ahead. Michael was growing up as a smart boy. A lucrative contract was looming in the workshop. Casey was blossoming, although she sometimes said jokingly that youth passes. For Alex, she was always beautiful, both in a simple robe in the kitchen and at a reception with her father in an elegant dress. Sometimes, when he came home from work in the evening, he would stop at the front porch, listen to the cicadas, and wonder, what had he done to deserve all this? Would fate never strike back? But then Mikey would run out the door, shouting, "Daddy's home," and Casey would appear right behind him, wiping her hands on her apron, and the dark thoughts would dissipate. No, it was real. It was right. At least that's what it seemed to him. Early mornings in Westbridge usually began quietly. Alex woke up just before dawn, as he had become accustomed to over the years of service and work. He crept out of bed quietly, trying not to wake Casey. His wife was asleep, her back to the wall, her light brown hair spilling out onto the pillow. Alex looked at her silhouette for a moment and smiled to himself. Even after all these years, he felt a surge of tenderness when he looked at her. In the kitchen, he was making coffee and frying eggs and bacon when he heard footsteps. He glanced over and saw Casey standing in the doorway. She had thrown on a light robe and looked tired. "Good morning." Alex put the plates on the table. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," she replied, sitting down on a chair. The smile that usually lit up her face in the morning was missing today. Casey looked thoughtful. Alex filled her mug with coffee, moved the sugar bowl. He noticed the shadows under her eyes. "Did you go to bed late?" he asked casually, sitting down opposite her. There was a pile of paperwork about the workshop. She stirred her coffee without looking at her husband. "I sorted it out until nightfall." Alex nodded, starting to eat his breakfast. Casey had been spending a lot of time lately doing bills and paperwork. He even felt guilty that he wasn't very good at paperwork and that he was leaving a lot of it to his wife. "Thank you for helping me with the finances," he said sincerely. "I would have gotten lost without you." "Uh-huh." Casey absent-mindedly bit into her toast. The only sound in the silence was the clinking of dishes. Alex glanced at his wife out of the corner of his eye. Usually chatty and cheerful, she seemed distant these days. Maybe she was overtired. "You know," he began cautiously, "maybe we should take a vacation. Go somewhere, just the three of us, you, me, and Mikey. Let's unwind." Casey looked up at him for the first time that morning, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "Vacation? Now. Why not?" Alex smiled. "The workshop is afloat. The team will cope in a couple of weeks. We'll go to the coast or the mountains and change the scenery." She looked back down at her cup. "It won't work yet. I can't leave now. Because of the garage business. The guys will do everything. We have reliable workers." Casey shook her head. "It's not about the garage. Just not now, okay? Later." She stood up, leaving the food almost untouched, and walked out of the kitchen, as if not wanting to continue the conversation. Alex watched her go, feeling slightly annoyed. Later, she'd been saying for months. Every time he'd suggested spending time with the family, a picnic, a trip to the zoo, Casey had an excuse to decline. She'd been happy to support any idea, but now she seemed to avoid spending time together. Alex finished his coffee alone. Mikey was already awake and playing in his room, humming a song from a cartoon. This children's melody dispelled Alex's heavy thoughts a little. He got ready for work, kissed his son, and wanted to look in on Casey, but she locked herself in the bathroom. "This is all strange," he thought as he left the house. It was a hot, hectic day in the shop. Before lunch, David dropped in an old friend who now worked for the police department and often came to check on the patrol cars. "Hey, how's life?" David wiped the sweat from his forehead, nodding towards the hood where Alex was fiddling with the engine. "It's fine." Alex twisted the wrench, trying to loosen the rusted bolt. "It's just a job." David sat down on the client's chair. "How are you? You look a bit gloomy." Alex dropped the tool, exhaled, admitting to himself that he really needed to share. "Yeah, Casey's not herself," he said quietly, so the workers wouldn't hear. "She's always busy, avoids conversations." David frowned. "It doesn't seem like her. Maybe she's tired or sick. I don't know. He says he has a lot to do." The friend asked cautiously, "And everything is okay with you? Well, in your relationship?" Alex straightened up abruptly. "Do you think the problem is me?" "No, I didn't." David waved his hands. "I'm just checking the version. There were no quarrels." Alex remembered that they almost never quarreled. But this coldness was worse than the quarrel. "No, everything is quiet, that's the point." David scratched his chin, wanted to say something else, but changed his mind. "Okay, keep me informed. Maybe you need help, tell me." He stood up. "I'll drop by in a few days." Alex nodded, watching his friend go. His heart ached. If something was noticeably wrong, even from the outside, it meant that something was really going on. He returned home that evening with a bouquet of wild flowers for Casey, wanting to do something nice and take her mind off her worries. But she wasn't home. The nanny they'd recently hired to look after Mikey after kindergarten reported that Mrs. Casey had called around 5 and said she'd be staying late at work. Alex was surprised. Casey usually came to the workshop with him, helped until lunch, then picked up her son. Why was she suddenly at work? Perhaps on City Hall business. Sometimes she helped her father with charity projects. But even in that case, she would have warned in advance. He put Michael to bed and settled down on the couch with a book, trying not to get worked up. The clock showed 10 p.m., then 11. At 11:30, the sound of an engine was heard outside the house. Casey walked in quietly, trying not to jingle her keys. She jumped when she saw her husband in the living room. "Oh, aren't you sleeping?" she said guiltily. "I was trying to be quieter." Alex sat down, putting the book aside. "Everything is fine. I was just worried. Where were you until this hour?" "I told you at work." She kicked off her shoes, rubbing her feet tiredly. "Preparing for the charity ball, there's a lot to do." "You probably haven't even had dinner." Alex stood up and headed to the kitchen. "I'll heat up some stew for you. You need to eat." "No, I'm not hungry," Casey responded, but he had already opened the refrigerator. A few minutes later, a plate of hot stew and bread was in front of her. Casey reluctantly began to eat under her husband's watchful eye. "And will you often have to stay late now?" Alex asked, trying to keep an even tone. "It's hard to say," she shrugged. "The ball is in a month. We need to make it in time." "Maybe then I should take care of the accounts myself, since you don't have a minute," he suggested a little sarcastically. "Otherwise, you don't have any days off." Casey looked up, her eyes shining with weariness and irritation. "No need to be dramatic, Alex. Everything is fine. Dad needs my help, and I am helping. It's temporary." Alex raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "Okay, okay. I have the best of intentions." He fell silent, not wanting to provoke an argument. Casey finished her meal in silence and went to take a shower. That night, lying next to her, Alex stared at the ceiling for a long time. She came home late, turned away, and fell asleep almost immediately, but he couldn't sleep. Unpleasant thoughts crept into his head. The situation did not improve over the following weeks. Casey often went away somewhere, on business. Sometimes this was explained by meetings to organize the ball. Sometimes urgent business trips for a couple of days suddenly appeared. Supposedly, she went to Austin to negotiate with sponsors. Alex nodded each time and said that he understood everything. But anxiety was growing in his chest. One evening, while sorting out the laundry, he found a strange receipt for two from an expensive restaurant in Austin in the pocket of Casey's dress. The date matched the day of her last business trip. Alex stared at the receipt, feeling his fingers grow cold. An inner voice kept saying, "Don't make things up." She must have had lunch with some benefactor or friend. He carefully returned the check to its place, deciding not to bring up the subject. But the worm of doubt began to stir even more. Later, he noticed that Casey had changed the password on her phone, although they had previously known each other's codes. She began to lock herself in the office to talk more often when her mobile rang. She answered questions sparingly, often getting irritated. "Alex, come on, don't act like a teenager." The last straw was their wedding anniversary. Alex had booked a table in advance at a cozy restaurant in a nearby town and arranged for a nanny to babysit Mikey. But the day before the celebration, Casey announced that she had to go to Houston for 3 days on foundation business. He reminded her about the anniversary, to which she only sighed. "Sorry, I'll be back, we'll celebrate." Alex tossed and turned for a long time that night. Something was definitely wrong. A year ago, Casey would have thrown the anniversary party herself. She was so romantic. Now she was easily canceling plans for some foundation. Noticing that he was left alone in the bedroom, Casey had gone to spend the night in the guest room. Citing an early departure and not wanting to disturb him, Alex made up his mind. Approaching her bag, which was left on the nightstand, he quietly unzipped it. There were documents there, a notebook, bus tickets to Houston, and a yellow envelope. Alex carefully took it out and looked inside. There were papers in the envelope, and he pulled them out halfway, reading the heading, "Complaint for Dissolution of Marriage." His heart skipped a beat. He pulled out the entire sheet. His name and Casey's were in the center. They prepared documents for filing with the court. Casey's signature was already at the bottom, and the filing date was 2 weeks ago. Alex felt the world tilt. The walls of the bedroom seemed to float. He reread the lines, hoping he was wrong. No, there was no doubt. His wife wanted a divorce. Trembling, he put the papers back where they were and zipped up the bag. His head was pounding. Why? Why hadn't Casey said anything? They weren't fighting, they weren't having any insurmountable problems, in his opinion. Alex had barely regained his composure before he made a firm decision. He was going to Houston after her. It couldn't be that everything would collapse like this, without explanation. Maybe there was still a way to stop this madness. In the morning, Casey left early, kissing a sleepy Mikey goodbye and throwing a dry, "Take care of your son," to her husband. Alex nodded, hiding his gaze. He had already thought it over. He would take Mikey to the neighbors. Fortunately, David's mother agreed to look after him, and he himself would follow, leaving in a couple of hours so as not to attract attention. The drive to Houston took several hours. All the way Alex tried to hold on from despair to anger and back again. Divorce. Why? What happened? Did she really fall out of love? But then why not just say, why these secrets? In Houston, he only knew the name of the hotel, which he managed to glance at on her ticket. A large business hotel in the center, glittering with glass. Alex stopped the car in the parking lot and entered the lobby, feeling his heart pounding in his throat. Looking around the room, he noticed a familiar figure at the reception desk. Casey. She had her back turned, talking to the receptionist. Next to her was a man, tall, in an expensive dark suit, with impeccably styled chestnut hair. The man had his arm around Casey's waist casually, as if it were his right. Alex felt a jolt of electricity. He recognized the man, District Attorney Mark Bennett, a star of the county justice system, one of Mayor Walker's allies. The same one he had met a couple of times at receptions. In a second, it all became clear. Alex felt rage and pain boiling inside him. His wife, and that pompous district attorney, that was what was behind her lies. Casey, he jumped up, not remembering how he ended up next to her. The wife turned sharply. Horror flashed in her eyes, then annoyance. She pulled away from Bennett's arm and took a step forward. Alex, what are you doing here? Her voice wavered, but she tried to sound confident. Mark Bennett frowned and stared at Alex, but remained silent for now. Me? Alex smiled bitterly, feeling himself shaking. Good question. Better tell me what you're doing here, Casey. And who is this? He glared at Bennett, though the answer was obvious. Casey straightened up, raising her chin. I'm on a business trip, on business, as I said. With the district attorney? Alex muttered, clenching his fists. In the same room? Bennett stepped forward, standing between them. Quiet, buddy. Don't make a scene. Don't you dare tell me what to do, Alex exploded. He walked around him and approached Casey. You're cheating on me with him? The business trips were with him from the very beginning, weren't they? Casey blushed, but her gaze was cold. Alex, let's not make a scene. This is a public place. You care about appearances? He almost shouted, and the receptionist at the counter stood up in alarm. You lied to me for so many months, led me by the nose. For this? For lover? The word came with pain. Casey flinched as if she had been struck. Listen, she began more softly. I wanted to explain everything to you, but... Alex didn't let him finish. But what? You wanted to file for divorce behind my back and live peacefully with him? What about our son? What about our family, Casey? Was it all a lie? Tears of rage and despair welled up in his eyes. Pain filled his chest. Casey looked away, her lips trembling. Bennett intervened again, his voice formal and icy. Mr. Garrett, you need to calm down. Believe me, it will be better for everyone. Alex turned to him. Are you telling me this? Taking a man's wife and child away from him, is that, in your opinion, better for everyone? Casey's already made up her mind, the prosecutor snapped. She filed a report. Your marriage is over, and resistance is pointless. These cold words had the effect of a red rag on Alex. He stepped closer to Bennett. You son of a bitch. His shoulders tensed, his fists clenched. Another moment and Alex would have struck. But out of the corner of his eye, he saw Casey's frightened face. Alex, don't, she cried, throwing herself between them and pushing her hands into her husband's chest. "Please, stop." Her touch sobered him. Alex froze, breathing heavily. Bennett stood behind Casey, still staring insolently. For 2 seconds, all three stood in tense silence. Bennett was the first to speak, now quietly but angrily. "Go away, Garrett. Don't make things worse for yourself." Casey, still touching Alex's chest with her hands, whispered softly, "Go home, Alex. Please. We have nothing more to talk about." She looked up at him. There was no love in her eyes, only pity and weariness, the look of a stranger. Alex took a step back, his breathing caught. He looked from his wife to the man behind her, and suddenly felt his strength leaving him. "Why, Casey?" he asked hoarsely, his voice breaking. "Why are you doing this to me?" She lowered her eyes and answered almost in a whisper. "That's how it has to be." Simple words like a sentence. Alex swallowed the lump that had risen and turned around, unable to look at them any longer. He staggered towards the hotel exit, feeling the gazes of the staff and guests, probably attracted by the noise. He didn't care. Everything inside him had collapsed. He paused at the entrance, clutching a column. He was overcome with resentment, anger, fear. He wanted to scream, but his throat was constricted. He heard footsteps behind him. Alex turned around and saw Bennett following him, alone. "Do you understand everything, my friend?" the prosecutor said through gritted teeth, coming closer. "It's all over between you. Casey is mine, and the son is staying with her too. Don't even think about clinging to her, you don't have a chance." Alex looked at him in silent fury. "You'll get the papers and the summons tomorrow," Mark Bennett continued coolly. "I advise you to sign everything peacefully. Otherwise, I have enough influence to make things worse for you." Alex straightened up. The enemy's words brought back some of his sanity. He understood that Bennett was now trying to break him completely. "We'll see about that," he exhaled. The prosecutor grinned, tilting his head to the side. "Really? Well, we'll see. But you know, the judge is a close friend of the Walker family. No lawyer in the county would take on a bullying veteran against the mayor. You've played with family life, and now that's enough." Alex was speechless. Every word of his opponent hit the mark. He really didn't have the connections or the money to compete with such people. Bennett, seeing his silence, grinned even wider. "Be smart. Go back to your hole and don't even think about showing up near Casey and her son. Otherwise, you'll regret it." These threats were too much. Alex grabbed Bennett by the lapels of his jacket, lifting him up. He jerked in surprise. "Listen up," Alex hissed right into his face. "This is my son, and I'm not your friend. If you—" "Let me go now, or I'll call the police," Bennett interrupted loudly, not trying to break free, but looking into Alex's eyes. "Think about it, Garrett. Tomorrow you'll be in jail for assault." Alex froze. He realized that he really was risking playing into the bastard's hands. After an agonizing moment, he released the prosecutor, pushing him away. He straightened his wrinkled jacket and said, "Behave sensibly." With these words, Mark Bennett turned and walked back to the entrance without even looking back. Alex stood there, shaking with anger, which was now directed not only at the enemy, but also at himself for his helplessness. A few minutes later, he got into his car and just sat there, staring at a spot on the steering wheel. His ears were ringing. Images of him hugging Casey at the bus, holding his newborn son, laughing at a picnic by the lake, were all in his mind's eye. And all those memories were now scorched, as if they had been doused with acid. What should he do now? Go home and wait for the summons? Try to fight? But how, if everything is against him? His thoughts raced until tears finally came. Alex pressed his fists to his eyes and let out his first sobs in years. His sobs were muffled in the darkness of the car, and there was no one to hear them. Thus his ideal life was cut short. Alex sat on a hard wooden bench in the hallway of the county courthouse, clutching his rumpled baseball cap in trembling hands. He had been there for over an hour, waiting for the divorce and custody hearing to begin. There was no one close to him. Casey had an entourage on his side. Mayor Walker himself, standing tall and proud, was talking to another man in an expensive suit, probably Casey's lawyer. Casey herself stood demurely behind them, her eyes downcast, as if she couldn't wait to get this over with. Alex felt like an outsider at this party. He tried to find a lawyer he called five, but after hearing who was opposing him, they all refused. Some said they were busy, some said outright, "I won't go against Mayor Walker." In the end, Alex decided to defend himself. Did you need an army of lawyers to prove the obvious? He believed that the truth was on his side. He was a faithful husband, a good father. Wouldn't the judge see that? "The case is Walker v. Garrett," the bailiff announced, looking out into the hallway. Alex stood up, his heart pounding. He followed Casey and her party into the courtroom. The small room smelled of old wood and paper. The judge, a short, plump man with gray sideburns, sat on the dais. Alex knew him vaguely, Judge Reed, an old friend of the mayor's, if word was to be believed. "Please be seated," the judge said in a monotone, looking at the papers in front of him. "This is the case of Casey Garrett, née Walker, seeking divorce from Alexander Garrett, custody of their minor child, and division of property." His voice sounded bored, as if everything had already been decided. Alex tried to meet Casey's gaze, but she looked away, not looking up. The plaintiff's lawyer, a clean-shaven, middle-aged man, began. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Garrett, is forced to ask for a divorce due to the impossibility of further cohabitation with the defendant. Attached is evidence of the defendant's antisocial behavior. Here is a psychologist's conclusion about Mr. Garrett's post-traumatic stress disorder. Here is a copy of the temporary restraining order after the incident with aggression." "What?" Alex couldn't resist, standing up. "What other psychologist?" The judge frowned and banged his gavel. Silence in the hall. "You will have the floor later." Alex sat down in shock. He didn't remember any psychologist. Then he realized, apparently, at Casey's request, someone had given an opinion without talking to him, but based on his service in the war, citing PTSD. And the restraining order Bennett had probably secured it through a judge he knew after the scene in the hotel. All in absentia, of course. Alex hadn't been notified of anything. The lawyer continued, as if reading from a piece of paper, a text prepared in advance. "In addition, there is evidence that the defendant subjected the plaintiff to emotional pressure, showed outbursts of anger, which created a dangerous environment for the child. In this regard, we ask the court to satisfy the claim for sole custody of Michael Garrett for the mother. As for the property, the Garrett Auto Repair Shop was founded with funds from the Walker family and registered in Casey Garrett's name. The house was also purchased with money from the plaintiff's family. Therefore, we ask that the specified assets be left for her as belonging to her by right. The defendant does not object to the transfer of his personal belongings, clothing, medals, etc." Alex felt his face flush. Everything was turned upside down. He was being portrayed as an unstable psychopath and a parasite who didn't aspire to anything. "Your Honor," he said firmly, rising when the lawyer fell silent. "With permission, I would like to say." The judge nodded indifferently. "Speak, Mr. Garrett." Alex swallowed. He hadn't prepared his speech in advance, relying on the judge's conscience. "Everything that was said here is a lie," he began loudly. "I did not harm Casey or our son. Yes, I had difficult moments after the war, but I overcame them. I never raised my hand against my family. I did not frighten them. As for the property, I built the workshop with my own hands, and we registered it in my wife's name only on the mayor's advice for convenience with the loan. We bought the house together with joint funds, and most importantly, I treat my son well, and he treats me well. There is no reason to deprive me of my paternal rights." Alex took a breath. His words were confused but sincere. Judge Reed raised an eyebrow slightly. "Is that all you have?" "No," Alex continued heatedly. "Casey cheated on me. That's why. She betrayed me, and now she wants everything. It's not fair. I won't give up my son without a fight." With that, he looked straight at his wife. Casey finally looked up. Pain flashed in her eyes for a moment, but she quickly looked away and said in a hushed voice, "Your Honor, it's unbearable to live with Alex. He's a different person after the war. I tried, but—" She fell silent, lowering her head. The lawyer spoke for her again. "As you can see, the marriage has effectively broken down due to the defendant's fault. I ask that the proceedings not be delayed for the sake of the psychological well-being of Mrs. Garrett and the child." The judge shook his head wearily. I see. I see that the parties have opposing versions. However, considering the documents presented, as well as the fact that the child is still small and needs a mother. "But I'm asking for joint custody," Alex exclaimed, feeling the situation slipping away. "Don't I have the right to see my son?" The judge looked at him over his glasses, irritated and mocking. "Mr. Garrett, you were issued a restraining order against your family due to your violent behavior. You violated it, by the way, by showing up today without a lawyer, but we'll make allowances." "I didn't know anything about him." Alex grabbed his head. "This is some kind of staging. One more word and I'll remove you for disturbing the peace," the judge snapped. Alex dropped his hands. He was pinned in place by these fakes. He looked helplessly at Casey. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. She didn't answer. She just closed her eyes. The judge, meanwhile, quickly said, "The court ruled, the marriage is dissolved. Custody of the minor Michael Garrett is transferred to the mother, Casey Garrett, with the father's right to see the child once a month in the presence of a social worker, starting no earlier than 6 months and subject to his completing a course of psychological rehabilitation. The property, the auto repair shop, the house, and the joint account are to be left to the plaintiff as actually belonging to her. The defendant is released from paying alimony due to the waiver of property claims." The judge raised his gavel. "I didn't refuse," Alex shouted, but a knock was already heard throughout the hall. "This is a mistake. I don't agree." "The decision has been made," the judge snapped, standing up. "The hearing is over." "No," Alex stepped forward. "It's not fair. You didn't even listen to me properly." The bailiff came closer and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Calm down, sir." Mayor Walker and his lawyer were already heading for the exit. The judge disappeared through the door. Casey stood up, looking down. Alex shook off the bailiff's hand and walked around the bench to her. "Casey," his voice trembled. "How is this possible? Why are you silent? Say something." The mayor immediately appeared next to him, standing between him and his daughter. "Don't you dare approach her. You heard everything. Stay away." Alex looked at his former father-in-law. He was no longer pretending to be a good friend. The mayor's face was stony and cold. "You set this all up," Alex said quietly, clenching his fists. "You wanted to get me out of the way." Frank Walker smiled at the corner of his lips. "Know your place, boy. Did you think you'd be welcomed into our family forever? You've had your day, thanks for being a part of the project." Alex gasped at the cynicism of these words. The project. So his whole life in recent years had been a project for them. He glanced at Casey. "Is all this a game for you too? Is your son also part of the plan?" Walker frowned. "Don't you dare touch my grandson. You're dangerous to him." The court decided that. Alex couldn't resist and blurted out, raising his voice. "The trial? This trial is a farce. You bought everyone. You forged everything." A bailiff appeared at the door of the hall, watching with concern. The mayor brought his face closer to Alex, hissing, "Enough, or you'll regret it." Casey tugged her father's sleeve timidly. "Dad, let's go already." Walker nodded at her, not taking his hard gaze off Alex. "Remember," he said slowly, "you are no longer anyone to us." After these words, he put his arm around his daughter's shoulders and directed her towards the exit. Casey glanced back at Alex only once. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she immediately turned away and left, quickly walking down the hallway after her father. Alex was left standing in the empty conference room. The world had finally collapsed. He had been deprived of everything: the woman he loved, his child, his home, his life's work. And he could do nothing. An hour later, he was walking down Westbridge's Main Street, where people glanced at him furtively and then looked away. News traveled fast in small towns. Surely everyone knew by now. Alex Garrett was a psychotic veteran who had lost his family because of his temper. Someone was probably already whispering that they had a good reason to suspect that he had a concussion in the head. Alex turned toward his not his anymore auto repair shop. He hadn't even stopped by there this morning. Everything was centered around the court. His old Chevy was parked at the gate, a trusty pickup truck he'd bought before the wedding. The bailiff who'd accompanied him home to pick up his things had allowed him to take the car as his personal property before the marriage. The rest, the house, the furniture, the bank accounts, was all going to his wife. He took only a suitcase with clothes, tools, and a couple of photographs from the house. As he packed his things under the supervision of a gloomy executor, little Mikey looked out of the living room, quietly crying, calling for his dad. But Alex could neither hug his son nor comfort him. The court order prohibited him from approaching the child. The nanny took the boy into the room, and Alex almost fell to his knees from the pain in his heart. Now he came to the shop, the one that bore his name. Or rather, no longer. Workers were taking down the sign with the Garrett name. A new sign was being prepared in its place. Westbridge Auto Walker Family Service. Alex stopped, looking at this scene. Next to him, with his arms crossed, stood the manager of the bank that had given him the loan, shaking hands with the man from the mayor's office. They were chatting cheerfully about something. One of the mechanics, noticing Alex, shifted from foot to foot, not daring to approach. Finally, he took a step. Boss, I mean Alex, the guy mumbled. We were told you're no longer the owner. The accounting department was taken away today. We're in shock. Alex just nodded, not knowing what to answer. Everyone understood everything, but no one dared to go against the mayor. The silence was broken by a mocking voice behind him. What did you come to admire? Alex turned around. Mark Bennett, the district attorney, stood in front of him, his jacket unbuttoned, a smirk on his face. Go away, Alex, he continued. You have no business here. The business is now under city control. Alex looked at his former garage. Rage raged in his chest, but he felt mortally tired. How much longer could he bang his forehead against this wall? He's silent, Bennett drawled. And rightly so. You've already lost. He came closer, lowering his voice. By the way, a piece of advice. Don't stand in front of everyone. People get nervous. What if you suddenly get an idea with your military background? If you do anything else, you'll end up behind bars, and they don't stand on ceremony with people like that. Alex clenched his jaw so hard his cheekbones ached. The prosecutor was clearly provoking, but Alex already understood that fighting would achieve nothing, it would only make things worse. What, no words? Bennett grinned. Okay, I have to go to the meeting, and you. Goodbye, soldier. He turned on his heel and walked toward his car, which was parked nearby. Alex watched him go with eyes full of hatred. Another minute, and the shiny black sedan disappeared around the corner. The workers finished installing the new sign. Walker Family Service, Alex read, feeling the last of the warmth drain from his soul. He silently climbed into the cab of his truck, placed his suitcase and toolbox, his entire belongings, on the seat. He sat there for a moment, staring into space. Then he started the engine and drove out of the yard without even looking back. Where to go? Home is lost. No family, friends. He called David during the day, but David hung up, then sent a message. Sorry, I can't help you. Apparently, friendship is friendship, but a career is more important. The mayor knew how to put pressure. Alex pulled out onto the highway out of town. Ahead of him lay a gray ribbon, the setting sun blinding his eyes. He drove at random, without a destination. On the side of the road outside the city, he noticed an old abandoned motel, turned in there. The building was clearly empty. The doors of the first room he came to were unlocked. Inside there was a moldy smell, but there was a bed without a mattress and a table. Alex threw his things on the floor. He had no more strength. He sank down onto the bare bed frame, staring at the ceiling, where a rusty fan blade was barely turning. That's it. Life is ruined. How much he dreamed of peace and happiness, and all this turned out to be a chimera, or a trap. Tears came to my eyes again, but I didn't want to cry anymore. I wanted to fall through the ground, to disappear, so as not to feel this pain. It was getting dark in the room. A cricket was chirping somewhere in the corner. Alex automatically took his phone out of his pocket. The screen was blank, not a single message or call. No one was looking for him, not his wife, not his friends. Only spam in his mail. Shadows were drawn on the wallpaper. In this semi-darkness, Alex suddenly clearly saw his son's face in front of him, a cheerful little boy who ran to meet him from work every evening. "Daddy, you're home." A ringing voice sounded in his memory. Pain shot through his chest again. He had lost Mikey. Strangers would raise him, perhaps instill in him a hatred for his father. Alex groaned, covering his face with his hands. This was worse than death. It was completely dark outside. Alex lowered his hands. He felt a hard, cold metal in the toolbox, a pistol. His service was Beretta, left over from the army. He carried it in his car, although he had never taken it out in all the peacetime. Slowly, he pulled out the weapon, checked the magazine full, clicked the safety, raised the barrel to his temple. The thought of ending the torment in one movement seemed temptingly simple. His finger was on the trigger. Alex closed his eyes. "Forgive me, son," he whispered into the void. Moments passed, but no shot was fired. His hand was shaking. Alex saw Mikey in his mind's eye, the boy laughing on the carousel, holding out his hands to him. "Daddy, let's go." This image did not allow him to pull the trigger. Alex lowered the gun. No, he couldn't leave like that. For his son's sake. Michael had to hear the truth someday. If he gave in now, the child would stay with these liars, grow up thinking his father was a monster. No, that couldn't happen. The thought of his son lit a spark in his petrified soul. Alex slowly placed the gun on the table. For a long moment, he looked at the weapon as if it were a strange symbol. Not physical violence, he thought. That's probably what they're waiting for. To say, "Here's a dangerous, crazy veteran." He stood up, straightening his stiff back. No, he would go the other way. He was a Marine. He had been through the hell of war and hadn't broken. Would they really make him an easy target after all that? Alex turned on the light on his phone and found a notebook. He used to write down business development plans, family dates. Now he opened a new page. At the top he wrote, "Goal, to restore justice." And below he began to scribble, barely keeping up with the ideas rushing out of his head. What is there against them? Corruption in the court. Judge Reed is a friend of the mayor. Prosecutor Bennett connection to Casey, abuse of power. Fake documents, fake psychologist. Guardianship, perhaps a forgery with the social services report. His hand trembled with excitement, but no longer from weakness, but from a new determination. If the system was being used unfairly against him, he too would find ways. "We need to gather evidence," he wrote further. "Find where they broke the law, who to prosecute. The police can't be their own people. But there's the press, the FBI. We need a stir." He remembered several of his fellow soldiers who became journalists after the army, or at least knew the right people. There are honest reporters in the country who like to expose those in power, and maybe they can be found among the higher-ups in law enforcement. At the bottom of the list, Alex wrote, underlined, "No giving up," for Michael. He put the notebook down. For the first time in days, his heart was beating not with fear or anger, but with a fighting spirit. Yes, he would start a war for the truth, but not by shooting a rifle, but by shooting facts. Night had already come into its own. Alex lay down on the Spartan bed, crossing his arms under his head. He would not sleep a wink today. His head was working too feverishly, thinking over the first steps. But for the first time in a long time, a spark of hope flashed inside. He was cornered, but these people were wrong to think that he was finally broken. A new battle would begin in the morning. The next day, Alex drove his truck toward Austin, where his army buddy, Sergeant Luis Martinez, lived. They had served 2 tours together, and if there was anyone he could trust right now, it was Louis. Louis picked up the phone immediately after hearing his old friend's voice. "Damn it, Alex. I thought you were gone for good." Almost, Alex grinned wryly, holding his cell phone to his ear while his other hand turned the steering wheel. "Listen, Lou, I'm in trouble. It's not something I can do over the phone, but I've been seriously screwed. I need help." On the other end, Louis answered without further questioning. "Come to me, we'll sort this out. The doors are open." And so Alex did. Martinez lived in a small house in the suburbs of Austin. As soon as the pickup stopped at the gate, a stocky man with a thick black beard came out to meet him. Louis gave Alex a brotherly hug and patted him on the back. "Glad to see you're alive. Now let's go inside. Tell me what happened." At the kitchen table with mugs of coffee, Alex laid out everything from his return home to yesterday's trial. Louis listened in silence, growing gloomier with each word. When Alex mentioned the role of the mayor and the prosecutor, his friend clenched his fists. "What bastards? May they be damned." "You can't even tell me," Alex sighed. "They calculated everything. I was left with nothing." Louis was silent for a few seconds, then said firmly, "You didn't give up. You called, and rightly so. We'll hit back." Alex nodded gratefully. These were exactly the words of support he needed. "I've been thinking," he said. "We need to make their dirty deeds public. I can't get through on my own, they're covered up, but if I make a fuss in the press or go higher..." Louis rubbed his chin. "There's definitely no point in going to the local police. The FBI is an option, but they need evidence. If you just come and say, 'I was deceived,' they'll laugh." "Then we need evidence," Alex repeated. "Documents, records, witnesses, anything that will catch them in a lie." Louis narrowed his eyes. "Your wife didn't come up with everything herself. The father is the mayor, and the lover is the prosecutor. There's probably a whole tangle of scams there. Maybe they robbed others like that too." Alex shrugged. "Maybe, but I don't know. Our town is full of rumors, but facts. Although I heard that the mayor is dishonest, he writes out contracts for himself and his people." There, Louis raised his finger. "Corruption. That's what you catch." He stood up and took a laptop out of the closet. "I had a friend who works in the road construction department. She said that the mayor of Westbridge sent a bunch of contracts to companies connected to his family." Alex tried to remember. "That's right. The city park was renovated by the company of the mayor's cousin. And my car repair shop was also financed by the city under the Veterans Assistance Program." He grinned maliciously. This meant that the mayor received political points for supporting the veteran and ultimately took the business. "There may be violations," Louis confirmed, quickly typing out queries on the internet. "I'll try to dig through the contract databases." As his friend tapped away, Alex felt something like optimism for the first time in a long time. They weren't going to throw punches. They were starting an investigation, like in the movies. A couple of hours later, Louis leaned back in his chair. "Well, it seems true. Look, the municipality of Westbridge has signed contracts worth almost $1 million over the last 5 years with companies where the Walker name appears." He turned the screen. Alex read, "Westbridge Auto Services $200,000 municipal equipment repair. Walker Real Estate and Development $300,000 daycare construction." And so on. Walker Real Estate is his brother, Bill Walker, I think, Alex recalled. "And my workshop is like 200,000, yes." "He gives money to himself." Louis shook his head. "Of course, this needs to be checked, but journalists love this kind of thing." "Yes, journalists." Alex drawled. "Do you know anyone you can trust?" Louis nodded confidently. "I know. Do you remember our medical correspondent, Joanna Rivers? The one who ran with us through the mountains in Afghanistan, filming reports?" Alex squinted, remembering the short girl with the camera who had gone out with their platoon a couple of times. "Joanna? Yes, she was brave. She works for an independent investigative agency now. She takes apart corrupt officials in a jiffy. We corresponded, I once leaked information to her about a case. I think she'll be interested in your story. Great, Alex perked up. Shall we contact her? I'm already writing, Louis smiled, typing out the message. I've briefly outlined the gist of it. We're waiting for an answer. He didn't have to wait long. About 10 minutes later, Louis's phone rang. He turned it on the speaker. Lou? Hi, it's Joanna. A surprisingly cheerful girl's voice was heard. I read your message. Is that all? Hello, Joe, Louis said. That's absolutely true. Sitting next to me is my friend, Alex Garrett, the veteran. Hello, Alex. The journalist's voice became more serious. Your case is impressive. Corruption, judicial arbitrariness. Are you ready to give an interview with the facts? Yes, Alex said firmly. I have something. I can tell you the details. I have the court decision papers in hand, and my friend is digging up data on the mayor's contracts. Great, Joanna said. I'm just outside Austin. I can drive up tonight or tomorrow morning. The sooner the better, Alex blurted out. He felt impatient. He wanted to act. Let's do it today, she agreed. I'll be at, she thought. Come to my place, Louis said. I sent you the address. I will. And Lou, thanks for sharing. The connection was broken. Alex exhaled. A real ray of hope had appeared. It might work out, he said with cautious optimism. You bet, Louis winked. Joanna's a serious shark. She'll tear them to shreds if she finds something to grab onto. They decided to use the time before the journalist's arrival wisely. Alex and Louis systematized everything they knew. They wrote down key names, dates, and possible evidence. Just in case, Louis made copies of all the contracts he found, and found through open registers that Judge Reed had received large donations for the election campaign from a certain foundation called For a Fair Trial, a year before the decision on Alex, and that foundation, as it turned out, had among its trustees. That's right, Frank Walker. Here's the connection between the judge and the mayor, Louis grinned, printing out the page. Not direct bribery, but a hint. That'll do, Alex agreed. He felt inspired. The threads were slowly coming together. Later in the evening, a car honked outside the house. A short woman of about 30 appeared with a backpack and a briefcase. Joanna Rivers' short brown hair, sharp eyes. She waved her hand. Hello, fighters. Louis grinned and hugged her in a friendly manner. Alex was a little shy, but the journalist was the first to extend her hand. Alex, nice to meet you. Sorry it's under these circumstances. The main thing is that you came, he replied. Inside the house, having barely sat down at the table, Joanna took out her voice recorder and laptop. Well then, tell me everything in order, without hiding anything. And show me the documents. Alex began, trying not to miss a detail. He laid out a copy of the court order he had been given. There was a whole stack of it, including the psychiatrist's report and the restraining order signed by a district judge from another city, apparently subordinate to Bennett. Joanna flipped through the papers, frowning. You're right, it's sewn with white thread. The psychiatrist, oh, here it is, a certain Dr. Ellis, who is a consultant to the City Council of Veterans. The mayor is probably his friend. He never examined me, Alex interjected. Of course. We'll send a request to the Medical Association later. She nodded and handed back the documents. Now, what did we manage to dig up? Louis took the floor. He showed her the data on the contracts, the judge's connections to the mayor, and listed all the suspicious points they had uncovered. Joanna took notes carefully, occasionally asking for details. Okay, she said, finishing her notes. This is a big story. I can see it right away. There's family drama, corruption in the mayor's office, and abuse of the law. People love that kind of thing, but the authorities hate it, those who do it. Will you be able to publish this? Alex asked hopefully. Not right away, she answered honestly. I need to double-check everything, take comments, maybe get some more evidence, preferably from someone on the inside. A witness? Louis asked. Yes, someone who is willing to confirm the machinations of the mayor or Bennett. Do you have any? Alex thought. Almost everyone in the city was afraid of the mayor. But then he remembered. There was one woman, Judge Reed's secretary. After the hearing, she ran out and quietly said to me, "I'm so sorry. I didn't pay attention to it then. Maybe she saw an injustice." "Do you know the name?" Joanna asked quickly. I think it was Miss Foster." "Yeah, someone called her Miss Foster in the hallway." "I'll try to find her," the journalist nodded. "And also, maybe one of the workers at your workshop, who saw how the mayor was influenced." Alex shrugged. "The guys knew that the mayor helped with the loan, but I doubt they'll risk speaking openly." "I'll try to be anonymous with them," she decided. "And perhaps I'll visit Westbridge under the guise of an ordinary journalist and interview the mayor about his successes. Maybe he'll blurt out something unnecessary." "It's dangerous," Alex frowned, "if they find out you're digging." Joanna smiled a wolfish smile. "Not the first time. Let them just try to interfere. I have connections in the state attorney's office and in the security department. We'll give them a hard time." There was a sense of strength in her confident voice. For the first time in a long time, Alex believed. Not everyone had sold out. There were still people ready to fight for the truth. They discussed the details late into the night. They decided to act quickly. Joanna had a plan to prepare the material within a week and immediately broadcast it on a major news portal, and on television she collaborated with one cable channel. But to do this, they needed trump cards. Such trump cards would be living evidence. It would be best if Casey herself spoke up, the journalist sighed. But there's little hope of that. Alex clenched his teeth. Yes, counting on his wife was pointless. She was too much under the influence of her father and lover. "Okay," Joanna clicked her laptop. "I'm heading to your town tomorrow. Louis, I owe you one. You'll be my cover. I'll introduce you as my cameraman." "With pleasure," Martinez grinned. Alex suddenly became nervous. "What should I do?" "You stay here for now." She looked at me seriously. "Don't stick your head out. If the mayor gets wind that you're with us, they might start covering their tracks. Ideally, they'll think you've given up and gone off to lick your wounds." Alex reluctantly agreed. He really wanted to participate in person, but he understood the logic. Besides, if he showed up in town, he could get arrested on a trumped-up charge. "Just keep me informed," he asked. "Of course," Joanna smiled. "And don't worry, Alex. We'll get them." There was such confidence in her words that Alex allowed himself to imagine for the first time. What if the truth prevails? He will see his son clear his name. After saying goodbye, Joanna and Louis went out to explore tomorrow. Alex was left alone in his friend's house, settling into the guest room. He still couldn't sleep, but now the reason was different plans and hopes were spinning in his head. He opened the same notebook with the list and added new points. Contracts revealed, judge's connection revealed, journalist working, and at the end he wrote, "Son, wait for me. I'll bring you back." That night, for the first time, Alex slept without nightmares, with a firm determination to face the new day as a fighter. Joanna and Louis arrived in Westbridge disguised as journalists for a local TV station, officially to do a story about life in provincial towns. It was a convenient excuse to meet the right people without raising unnecessary suspicions. The first thing they did was head to City Hall. When he learned that the reporters wanted to do a quick interview, Mayor Walker straightened his shoulders and graciously agreed to receive them in his office. Frank Walker greeted the guests cordially, radiating the charm of a small-town politician. He wore a light gray suit, his face beaming with friendliness. He was clearly accustomed to charming the press. "Welcome to our fine town," boomed the mayor, sitting down opposite Joanna with the camera rolling, Louis playing the cameraman. "How can I help you?" "Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor," Joanna began with a professional smile. "We're doing a series of stories about small towns and their leaders. We'd like to hear about your successes as mayor, the city's accomplishments." Walker beamed even brighter and launched into a smug monologue. He spoke about the built playgrounds, the new kindergarten, naturally omitting that the money went to his brother's company. He spoke about supporting small businesses in particular. He mentioned grants allocated to veterans. Joanna became wary. Grants for veterans? Sounds interesting. Can you elaborate? Oh yeah, the mayor smiled at the camera. For example, our citizen Alex Garrett, a former Marine, received city assistance to open an auto repair shop. We're very proud to support our heroes. Really wonderful, the journalist nodded. And how is Mr. Garrett doing now? Is his business flourishing? For a second, something like irritation flashed in the mayor's eyes, but he immediately regained his composure. As far as I understand, there were some family difficulties. In such cases, our duty is first and foremost to protect the interests of the child and wife. So the workshop passed to Miss Walker, my daughter, and Alex. He, unfortunately, was prone to outbursts of instability, so I'm afraid he left our city. He spread his hands, shaking his head sympathetically. Joanna nodded, making a note. The mayor had rehearsed his response quite cleverly. He praised himself and denigrated Alex. I understand, she said. Did you personally know Alex well? Walker frowned slightly. Of course, he's a son-in-law. I mean, he was a son-in-law. A good guy at first, too bad the war left its mark on him. Is he dangerous? Joanna asked innocently. The mayor sighed. Unfortunately, yes. The latest incident confirmed that my daughter was right to seek protection from the court. But these are family matters. I don't think your viewers are interested in such sad stories. Of course, she agreed. Let's get back to city affairs. The interview continued for a few more minutes, but Walker didn't say anything significant. But Joanna caught on. The mayor was clearly wary of Alex's name. He had already built for himself the role of a caring father forced to tame his wild son-in-law. Thank you for the conversation, the journalist said at the end, shaking his hand. You're always welcome. The mayor gallantly escorted them to the door. Good luck to you. As soon as they walked away from the city hall, Joanna whispered to Louis. What a snake. Not a drop of remorse, just self-promotion. Yeah, Louis nodded, but he confirmed that he participated to protect his wife and child. So, the pressure on the court was under the banner of the family. We already knew that, but it's good that he let it slip, Joanna noted. Okay, let's go to court. They headed to the county courthouse. Joanna had arranged an interview with Judge Reed, ostensibly for a story about local justice. The judge agreed, but asked very briefly, saying he was busy. The judge's office was stuffy and smelled of old paper. Reed greeted them less warmly than the mayor. You wanted to ask about the legal proceedings. Just faster, please. Joanna turned on the recorder and began politely. Your Honor, tell us about the peculiarities of judicial work in a small town. Reed muttered the usual phrases about being close to people and hard work. Then she asked, have you ever had cases that were particularly difficult to remember? The judge adjusted his glasses. In our quiet town, almost all cases are typical. Family disputes, minor offenses. Ah, family disputes. Joanna pretended to suddenly remember. By the way, recently, I think there was a high-profile case. The divorce of veteran Alex Garrett and Casey Walker, the mayor's daughter. I read a mention in the newspaper. Reed shifted nervously in his chair. Nothing big, a regular divorce case. They write that there were difficult circumstances, guardianship, psychological examination. Everything is in accordance with the law, the judge snapped. If you're talking about that case, the court made a decision based on the child's best interests. I see, Joanna cast a searching glance at him. And there was no outside pressure on the court. The mayor is the plaintiff's father, after all. Reed blushed. What do you think you're doing? No one pressured you. Everything is fair and impartial. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, she said quickly. I'm just clarifying the details for objectivity. No comment, the judge muttered, standing up. The interview is over. He literally escorted them out into the corridor without even saying goodbye. As the door slammed shut, Louis whistled softly. It's immediately obvious that your conscience is not clear. Joanna chuckled. Of course. Okay, the main thing is not him, but those who can speak. They went to look for Miss Foster's secretary, whom Alex had told them about. It wasn't hard to find her. The office said that Miss Foster had taken sick leave. Joanna got the address from a talkative clerk, pretending to want to hand over some documents. Miss Foster's house stood on a quiet street. It was low, shabby, with a small garden. When they knocked, they heard shuffling footsteps. The door opened slightly, and an elderly woman in glasses looked out. "Miss Foster?" Joanna asked calmly. "We're from the court service. We'd like to check on your well-being and pass on some papers." From the court? The old woman frowned. "And where are the documents?" It was obvious that she was wary. Joanna realized that direct deception would not work. She took out her agency's business card. "Sorry, we're not from the court," she said quietly. "My name is Joanna Rivers. I'm a journalist. I need your help, and I'm sure you're right." Foster was about to close the door. "No, no, go away. I'm on sick leave." "Please listen." Joanna managed to put her foot in the door. "This is about Alex Garrett and what happened at the trial." The old woman's eyes widened behind her glasses. "Alex," she whispered, "are you from him?" "Yes, he said that you showed him sympathy," nodded Joanna. "We want to restore justice. He suffers greatly without his son." Miss Foster shook her head. "My God, poor boy. What have they done to him?" "So tell us," the journalist asked softly. "You saw everything. Your conscience is bothering you, isn't it?" "It's painful," Foster whispered, looking down. "I've been in court for 30 years, but this." Joanna and Louis held their breath. The old woman opened the door wider. "Come in, just quickly." Inside the modest living room, Miss Foster sank into a chair, took out a handkerchief, rubbing her sweaty palms. "I'm retiring soon," she began haltingly, "and I keep thinking, should I really end up like this, pretending to be blind?" "What happened in Garrett's case?" Joanna asked quietly. The secretary looked her straight in the eyes. Judge Reed was coerced. The day before the hearing, Mayor Walker came to him personally. They had a long conversation behind closed doors. And then the district attorney, Mr. Bennett, came. The three of them sat for about 2 hours. I don't know the details, but I heard snippets. "We need to decide quickly. He shouldn't get anything. Casey shouldn't get hurt." She wiped her forehead with a handkerchief. The judge came out white as a sheet, and then he told me to prepare the decision forms in advance. In fact, the reception was the day before the hearing without the defendant himself. Louis clenched his fists tightly, but remained silent, letting the others speak. At the hearing itself, the judge already knew everything in advance. The mayor was standing behind him not physically, but mentally, you understand. Miss Foster smiled bitterly. "And afterwards, I saw this poor guy, Alex, when everyone had left. He was standing there, staring into space. I felt so sorry for him that I simply couldn't help myself. I said, 'I'm sorry, but what's the point?'" Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Joanna gently touched her hand. "You are helping a lot now. Your words can restore justice." "But I'm afraid," the old woman muttered. "If they find out, they'll sue me or something." "We can remain anonymous," the journalist promised. "But if it comes to an investigation, your testimony may be needed." Foster paused, then sighed heavily. "Okay, well, how much time do I have left? I'd better leave with my head held high." She straightened up as much as she could. "You can record it. I am a witness to the pressure on the court. I am ready to testify to the federal authorities, if necessary." Joanna thanked Miss Foster with all her heart, and, having received her consent to contact if necessary, she and Louis retreated. "Excellent," Louis said when they were far enough away. "It's a bomb." "Yes, a direct hit," Joanna confirmed, clutching the notebook with the testimony to her chest. Anonymous or not, the fact remains. The judge was put under pressure. Now, if only there was something on Bennett himself, Louis thought. Although there's enough already, the prosecutor's connection with his wife, pressure on the court. "Perhaps I should get a comment from him." Joanna grinned. "I'll give him a call." She dialed the number of the district attorney's office. They told her that Mr. Bennett was in a meeting. When she introduced herself as an independent journalist and mentioned the mayor's daughter's divorce, the secretary immediately tensed up and said that the prosecutor does not comment on personal matters. An attempt to call Bennett himself on his mobile phone also failed. The phone went unanswered. "He's on the lookout," Joanna said, putting the phone away. "The mayor must have already announced our visit." "Maybe we should leave right away," Louis suggested, "before the tail gets glued on." "Yes, I think there's nothing more for us here," she agreed. They hurried to the car. However, it was too late. They had barely driven away from Miss Foster's house when Louis noticed in the mirror a dark blue sedan appearing from around the corner. "They're leading us," he said. Joanna also saw a car, keeping its distance but following steadily. "Let's try to break away," she decided. Louis picked up speed, pulled out onto the highway and out of town. The sedan sped up, keeping up. He was clearly keeping up. "Maybe we should stop and see what we need," Louis suggested. But suddenly the sedan jerked forward. The driver, seeing that they were not stopping, went to overtake. Having drawn level, the unknown person abruptly drove the car in their direction, trying to push them to the side of the road. "Damn," Louis cursed, turning the wheel to avoid a collision. The cars sped along the country road. The sedan tried to squeeze them out again. A face flashed in the window, one of the local police, Joanna thought. "We won't stop," she snapped. "Let's go to the Austin Highway, there's traffic there." They were steadily approaching the highway. The pursuer, apparently not wanting to cause an accident in front of witnesses, slowed down. Soon the sedan disappeared altogether, falling behind. Louis took a breath. "Phew, we almost got into trouble. Now it's definitely time to get out," Joanna chuckled. "See, they've already started using force. A good sign, it means we're close." She immediately called Alex and said briefly, "We collected a bunch of materials, but there were problems. We're going out, and we'll tell you everything in person." A couple of hours later, they finally returned safely to Austin, where Alex was waiting for them. When he saw Joanna and his friend at the door, he jumped up. "Well, how did it go?" "Not bad," the journalist smiled tiredly. "We dug up what we needed, but they're not asleep either." Louis hugged Alex. "Brother, we'll tell you now. Make the coffee stronger." That evening, the team of truth fighters Alex, Louis, and Joanna finalized their plan of attack. They had interview with the mayor revealing his involvement, a recording of the judge's heated refusal, indirectly confirming that something was wrong, Miss Foster's full testimony regarding the pressure, documentary findings on contracts and finances, facts about Bennett's relationship with Casey. There was enough material for a high-profile article and a news story. "We'll be releasing it tomorrow morning," Joanna decided. "I've already sent the draft to the editor, and he's thrilled. It'll be a bomb for the entire region, if not the state." Alex felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Excitement at the prospect of justice, anxiety for his son. How would Casey react? What would happen to Mikey when this came out? "I'll try to get in touch with someone at the FBI as soon as this is published," Joanna said. "I have a contact who should be able to open a case quickly." Alex nodded. "Right after that means the authorities will find out almost at the same time as the morning news." "Expect something fun," Louis chuckled, clapping Alex on the shoulder. "Tomorrow their world will turn upside down, just like yours is now." "I hope so," Alex answered quietly. Before going to bed, he sat on the porch for a long time, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, in another city, his little Michael might already be asleep, not knowing anything. "Soon, son," Alex whispered into the night. "Daddy will be back for you soon." He believed in it more than ever. Monday morning began with the phone ringing incessantly. Alex jumped up from the couch in Louis's living room. It was Joanna calling. "It's all on air," she said excitedly. "The article is online. The news is on the radio and TV. It started." Alex quickly turned on his laptop. The front page of a major news site read, "Quiet Town Corruption Scandal. Mayor, Judge, Prosecutor accused of conspiring to kill veteran." Next to it was a photo of Mayor Walker in front of City Hall, and below that, a photo of Mark Bennett and Judge Reed. Alex felt his heart pound. This was happening. Louis ran out of the room, holding the radio on in his hands. "Listen," the announcer's voice was saying, "a big scandal is brewing in Westbridge, Texas. According to independent journalists, Mayor Frank Walker and District Attorney Mark Bennett are suspected of conspiracy and abuse of power. They allegedly influenced a judge's decision in the divorce case of Marine Corps veteran Alex Garrett to deprive him of his business and parental rights in favor of the mayor's daughter. The case also involves suspicions of fraud with municipal contracts. State authorities have already announced the beginning of an investigation." "They've already announced it," Alex repeated, not believing his ears. "It hasn't even been an hour." "I told you, it's a big deal," Joanna laughed on the phone. "I'm getting calls from reporters all over the place asking for comments. The State Bar Commission announced it would look into Judge Reed. The governor's representative called our editor, saying, 'Give us the materials, we'll look into it.' It's all happening, Alex." His legs gave way and he sank into a chair. After months of humiliation and despair, the truth had spoken loudly. "Thank you," was all he could say. "It's too early to thank me," she replied. "This is just the beginning. Sit quietly for now. By the way, as soon as there is news, I'll let you know." She hung up because, judging by the sounds, someone was already calling her on the second line. "You should see the mayor's face now," Louis grinned. "I wish," Alex sighed, but he could only imagine. At this point, chaos reigned in Westbridge. As soon as Mayor Walker woke up, he grabbed the phone. It was ringing nonstop. They were calling from all directions. Angry city councilors, journalists, even his party bosses from the state capitol. Frank Walker, bristling, shouted into the phone that it was all a lie and a provocation. Then he dialed Bennett's number. "Mark, did you read it? What the hell should I do?" There was also a commotion in the district attorney's office. Mark Bennett, white as a sheet, was cursing under his breath as he read the article on the screen. "Calm down, Frank, calm down," he said into the receiver, trying not to show the tremor in his voice. "We'll prepare a refutation now. We'll say that this is slander on the part of an embittered husband, yes." She wrote about contracts, about the judge. The mayor was literally choking with rage. Where did it all come from? "You promised that everything would be quiet. How did I know that Pup would hire a journalist?" Bennett snapped, losing his composure. "Listen, we have to stick to one line. Deny everything. I've already instructed the press secretary to prepare a statement about false accusations by an angry veteran." "Yes, yes," the mayor nodded feverishly, although his interlocutor could not see him. "Now I do too." He didn't finish. The door of the house swung open, and Casey ran into the hallway with a newspaper in her hands. Her face was deathly pale, her eyes were swollen. Apparently, she had already cried enough. "Dad!" she screamed. "What are they writing?" "What?" Walker pressed the phone against his shoulder, rushing to calm his daughter. "Darling, don't worry, everything will be fine." "What will happen?" she sobbed. "It's all about us. About me." "I'll call you back," the mayor said to Bennett, and cut the call. He hugged Casey. "Quiet, quiet. These are enemies. They want to blacken our name. We'll prove that it's all a lie." "But," she hesitated, meeting her father's gaze. "Is that a lie?" Mayor Walker frowned. "Casey, not now. You wanted to take control of your life, right? I did what I had to." She pulled away. "I didn't want it to be like this. Now everyone knows." "No one will know more than they need to," he snapped. "The main thing is to hold on. Don't tell anyone anything, okay? Not the press, not the investigators." To the investigators, she covered her mouth with her hand in horror. As if in answer to her question, brakes squealed outside the house. From the window, they saw several black SUVs. Lights flashed in the driveway. Casey ran out onto the porch and gasped. Men in FBI jackets and several Texas Ranger officers were heading toward the house. "Father," was all she breathed out. Frank Walker gathered all his political chutzpah and stepped forward. "Gentlemen, what does this visit mean?" "I don't have time, A thin agent stepped forward and showed his ID. "Agent Hawkins, FBI. Mayor Walker, we have a search warrant for your home and office." What?" The mayor backed away. "On what grounds?" "There is sufficient suspicion of corruption," the agent snapped. "Here is a copy of the warrant signed by a federal judge." Rangers with determined faces appeared behind the agent. One of them said, "Frank Walker, in accordance with the order of the state attorney's office, you are suspended from office pending the investigation." The mayor felt the ground slipping from under his feet. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted, turning purple. "I won't let this go." "Please do not resist," Agent Hawkins replied coldly. "Gentlemen, proceed." Several people entered the house, ignoring the loud protests of the owner. Casey, pressed against the railing, sobbed. An hour later, a confused Judge Reed was led out of the town hall in handcuffs. He had come to work that morning, but was immediately arrested on charges of violating his oath and forgery. Reed mumbled something about an order from above, but no one was listening to him. At this time, papers were being feverishly burned in the district attorney's office. Mark Bennett, realizing that the FBI would probably come to him, was furiously tearing up incriminating documents. His deputy entered with a report. "Mark, the feds have arrived." Bennett threw the pieces. "Damn it! Play for time. Say I'm on my way out." He grabbed the phone, dialed Casey, no answer. "To hell with her. Suitcase need to get some cash." He rushed to the safe. But he didn't have time. The door swung open, and the same inevitable people in uniform appeared on the threshold. "Mark Bennett," the ranger thundered, "you are under arrest on suspicion of abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit corruption." The prosecutor darted toward the desk as if he was going to hide something in a drawer, but two agents had already twisted his arms behind his back. Cold bracelets clicked shut on his wrists. "This is ridiculous," he croaked as he was led down the hallway under the shocked gaze of his colleagues. "I'm the district attorney. I'll explain everything." "Explain it at the station," the agent said. "It's Garrett," Bennett shouted. "He cooked this whole thing up. He's a psycho. You'll regret it." But his cries were drowned out by the roar. Journalists crowded the entrance, and the news spread quickly. Questions flew in Bennett's face. "Are you really the mayor's daughter's lover? Did you bribe the judge? What will you tell Alex Garrett?" Mark swallowed convulsively, lowering his eyes, and remained silent until he reached the patrol car. That same day, Frank Walker, who had been removed from office, resigned for health reasons under pressure from the scandal and the governor. After a search, during which interesting documents were found, such as receipts from contractors and a plan for the operation in Alex's case, written on a piece of paper, the former mayor was also taken into custody. He was led out of the city hall building late in the evening. People who heard the news crowded around the entrance. Some shouted, "Shame!" at him, others just looked on in silent shock. This man was considered a pillar of the community. Alex wasn't in the crowd, but you didn't have to be there to feel that it had happened. Of all the defendants, only Casey Walker remained free. After an interrogation, where she, trembling, said that her father and Mark had organized everything, and she just wanted to get a divorce quickly and be with her loved one, she was released home on a promise to appear. No charges have been brought against her, yet the investigation decided that she was more of a pawn. However, her reputation was in tatters. Casey's name thundered on all channels as a participant in the scam, albeit an involuntary one. In quiet Westbridge, the sensation exploded like a bomb. Locals now remembered Alex with horror at their own wrongness. It turns out they had believed the rumors in vain. Many felt ashamed of their cowardice in turning away from him then. But Alex cared little. The main thing he learned was from a news broadcast late that night. A federal judge has signed an order temporarily transferring custody of Michael Garrett from Casey Walker to his father during the investigation. Alex Garrett has been notified and will soon be reunited with the child, according to social services officials. Hearing this, Alex burst into tears. Real, happy tears. Louis, clapping him on the shoulder, almost cried too. They had been through the war together, but these tears of victory were special. That same night, Alex sat down at the table to write a letter. The addressee was Casey. He chose his words not to justify himself, no, to say goodbye. He needed to end this chapter of his life. Casey, he wrote on the page with a pen. I once loved you more than life itself and trusted you unconditionally. You chose a different path. I hold no grudge. All the evil you did to me is already behind me. The most important thing now is our son. I will always be his father and will try to give him the best. I don't know if there will be a place for you in his life. Time and your actions will decide. Goodbye, Alex. He reread what he had written, then added a postscript. Trust is a luxury you have lost. Alex felt liberated after sealing the envelope. New concerns awaited him, joyful ones. Tomorrow he was going back to Westbridge, but this time accompanied by representatives of social services to pick up Mike. He imagined how he would hug his son and smiled through involuntary tears. Yesterday, he didn't know if he would live to see this moment. And today justice has triumphed. In the morning, Alex, accompanied by a social worker and two rangers, crossed the threshold of a familiar courtyard in Westbridge. Only yesterday this city had been the place of his shame, but today it greeted him differently. Neighbors looked out of their windows with curiosity and timidity, but no one looked with disdain. The nanny opened the door to the Walker's house. Mikey was standing next to her, his little suitcase already packed. Seeing his father in the doorway, the boy let out a joyful cry. Dad! Alex dropped to one knee, opening his arms wide, and his son rushed to him. He hugged the boy to his chest, closing his eyes in happiness. Tears welled up in his eyes. Daddy, are you here to pick me up? Mike asked hopefully. Yes, darling, Alex said hoarsely. Now we will be together. He picked up his son, as he had done before, and held him close. The social worker smiled tenderly, turning away so as not to disturb the moment. Casey appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with her hand over her mouth, her eyes red from crying. Alex met her gaze. The seconds dragged on. Casey gathered her strength and took a step forward. Alex, she called quietly. He was silent. What could he say now? Instead of answering, Alex put Mike down on the ground and ruffled his blonde hair. Son, wait for me by the car, okay? With social media, I'll be there soon. The boy nodded and obediently ran to the gate where the social worker was waiting. Alex straightened up, looking at Casey. She began, but her voice broke. He noticed an envelope in her hands, the same one he had sent her the day before. Casey held it with trembling fingers. Did you read it? Alex asked quietly. She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. Forgive me. Forgive me. Alex closed his eyes tiredly. The word sorry hung in the air, but it was unlikely to change anything. I don't deserve to be forgiven, I know that, Casey continued through her tears. Just know that I didn't mean for this to happen. I was a coward and listened to my father. Alex looked at the once beloved face, now alien and lost. There was no anger or former love in his soul, only emptiness and pity. Take care, Casey, was all he said calmly. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Are you going to let me see Mikey? Alex thought for a moment. She had committed treason, but she was also the mother of his son. He did not want to take revenge at the cost of the child's mental well-being. When everything settles down, we can come to an agreement, he finally answered, but only for Mike's sake and at his request. Casey lowered her hands and looked into his eyes hopefully. I will prove that I deserve to be his mother, at least sometimes. I promise. Alex nodded silently. The parting words were said. He turned and headed for the exit. Alex, she called out at last. He stopped but did not look back. Yes, thank you for not pushing him away from me completely, Casey whispered. Alex said nothing and walked away. Behind him, he could hear quiet sobbing, perhaps sincere. But it was no longer his business. He put Mikey in the car and fastened his seat belt. The boy asked, "Will Mom come to visit us?" "We'll see, my friend," Alex answered softly, running his hand over his son's head. "While you and I are leaving far from here, we'll start a new life." Mike smiled and took his father's hand, leaning in trustingly. Alex felt a lump in his throat. He got behind the wheel, and their car left the yard where so much had happened, good and bad. 2 days later, Alex and his son were already outside of Texas. He decided to settle in another state, where nothing would remind him of the wounds he had suffered. He chose a lively town in neighboring Oklahoma. His late mother's distant relatives lived there, and they were happy to help with housing. Soon father and son moved into a cozy house with a white picket fence on a quiet street. The neighbors smiled at the new arrivals, did not pester them with questions, but immediately accepted Mike to play with their children. On the third day, a local priest came to say hello, and when he heard that Alex was a mechanic, he said, "We have an old auto repair shop for sale. Take a look, it might suit you." So, step by step, Alex built a new life. He bought that small auto repair shop, again with a loan, but now on his own, without anyone's guardianship. Reports about his story made him an unofficial celebrity in the area. Many knew that this guy went through hell and got his son back. Clients flocked to him willingly. Mikey went to a new school. At first, he missed his mother, but childhood memories quickly extinguished the pain. There was a loving dad nearby, new friends. Alex never spoke badly about Casey in front of his son, only answering questions that his mother stayed at home and can't come yet. In the evenings, Alex did homework with the boy, played ball on the lawn, and read bedtime stories. Sometimes, putting his son to bed, he stroked his soft hair and couldn't believe his happiness. Here it was, the normal life he had dreamed of so much after returning from the army. Yes, he had to go through a nightmare, but now it was all over. Sometimes he had disturbing dreams about the trial or the war, but when he woke up, he heard his sons breathing from the next room and calmed down. The main thing was that Mike was nearby and safe. The Walker Bennett case was still ongoing, but Alex wasn't too worried about its outcome. The FBI and the state attorney's office had collected a lot of evidence, and the mayor and the prosecutor were facing significant prison terms. Judge Reed had been disbarred and was facing punishment as well. Casey had been brought in as a witness. She would likely avoid jail, but the publicity and loss of her position were her just punishment. Alex learned about all this from the news. He felt almost no gloating, only deep relief. Justice had been restored. His name had been cleared. One day, a film crew from the same channel that Joanna worked for came to him to film a continuation of the story about how Alex's lives now. He agreed let people know that the truth has won. In an interview, he thanked everyone who helped. His support group, that's what he called Louis and Joanna, who were also present at the filming. After the interview, when the cameras turned off, Alex hugged his friends tightly. They had been through a lot. That evening, Louis and Joanna sat with him on the porch of their new house, watching Mikey kick a ball around the yard with the neighbors' kids. The setting sun painted the sky gold. "So, is life getting better?" Louis asked, raising his can of Coke in a playful toast. "Of course," Alex smiled. Joanna narrowed her eyes slyly. "All that remains is to learn to trust people again, right?" Alex looked at his son running on the grass and quietly answered, "Trust is truly a luxury. Now I know who I can afford it to." He looked at his friends with gratitude. He trusted these people implicitly. They had proven themselves worthy. "And Mikey, I hope, will grow up among people he can trust," he added. Joanna nodded. "He will. He has a great father." Alex smiled sheepishly and sipped his cola. There was a strange peace inside him. There would be challenges ahead. Raising a son alone was not easy. But he was not afraid. He had gained and lost much, gone through betrayal, and regained his honor. Now Alex knew the value of trust and would not give it away to anyone for free. In the twilight, when his friends had left, Alex sat on the porch for a long time, thinking. The stars flashed one after another in the dark sky. A thought came to mind: trust is a luxury that must be earned. He had not thought about these words before, trusting blindly. Now he understood them completely. Yes, Alex said quietly to himself, that's exactly it. He got up, hearing Mikey's sleepy voice from inside the house. Dad? It was time to put his son to bed. Alex entered the illuminated, warm house, closing the door behind him. New days were ahead of him, and his son peaceful, honest, without fear. And in this new world, trust really became a treasure rare and valuable, which Alex now bestowed only on those who truly deserved it. Alex Garrett's story has spread across the country, serving as a reminder that abuse of power will not go unpunished. Truth has prevailed, and trust has regained its true value, the very luxury that everyone must earn. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.